Dr. Robin, I'm a post-traumatic parent and I'm so confused about my upbringing. There were some things about my upbringing that I liked that were good and comfortable, and then there were some things that were really painful and difficult for me. And it's kind of hard for me to understand how those things happened to me. And I'm trying to make sense of it. It feels like on the internet, there's so much messaging around, if your childhood was difficult, your parents were toxic and abusive, and you need to go gray rock and cut them off. But I don't feel like my parents were toxic and abusive. I'm very not happy with many things that happened to me in childhood. And I don't want to cut off from my parents because I don't think they're toxic, evil people, but I do get very uncomfortable when I'm around them. Can you help me make sense of all of this? Hi, I'm Dr. Robin Koslowitz, YouTube's post-traumatic parenting expert. Today, I'm responding to a question from a post-traumatic parenting community member who doesn't quite know how to make sense of the childhood she had and how to interact with her family now that she's aware of some of the dynamics and some of the harm that she suffered. But at the same token, she wants to repair that relationship. She doesn't quite know how. If you're a post-traumatic parent and you had complicated family dynamics growing up and you've been thinking about this, if you've been finding family dynamics difficult to navigate, welcome. We get it. We've been there. We're post-traumatic parents too. Please click subscribe below so you never miss another episode. So I agree. It is human nature, and there are also certain corners of the internet that really feed into this human nature, that when something happens, we look for who to blame, right? If you ever see a little kid and like they bump into a table, they might slap the table and go, "Stupid table, why are you in my way?" Like, the table's always there. The table did not move, right? It's not the table. But it's human nature that when we suffer a misfortune, when something upsetting happens, we look for who to blame. There is room in recovering from a difficult, traumatic childhood to understand the concept of dialectics. Dialectics was first really popularized by Marsha Linehan, who created dialectical behavior therapy, to teach people to undo black and white thinking. Becky Kennedy didn't really quote Marsha Linehan because she didn't actually say it came from Marsha Linehan, but that's kind of where she got it from, talks about the idea of two things are true. So dialectical behavior therapy teaches this idea that two things are true. There's a dialectic. Your parents could have done the best they could with the tools they had, and their tools were woefully inadequate and perhaps even harmful. Both of those things are true. I know situations where a child abuser confused parents, gaslit parents, made himself seem like the children's savior, but was actually abusing children. And there's room to say the parents should have known, they should have figured it out, they should have gotten it. But sometimes, particularly when you're dealing with a tight-knit community, if you're dealing with a culture where people tend to be obedient to authority figures, when you're dealing with more sheltered communities, sometimes the parents didn't know. And they can have done the best they could with the tools they had, and those tools could have been inadequate. We don't have to blame a parent and consider them toxic to say, I had a traumatic childhood. I think of my own childhood where I actually had a wonderful mother who was very preoccupied in keeping my father alive and then mourning his death. And there were things I went through that I didn't want to burden her with. As wonderful and kind as she was, and she really did the best she could with the tools she had. And she had formidable tools. She was a school guidance counselor who was a kind, wonderful, caring person. And because of all the stress she was under, sometimes those tools were inadequate for me. And do you see how I can say my childhood was traumatic? And that doesn't mean that she was abusive. And that doesn't mean that she was toxic, right? Because two things can be true. That can happen. So there is place to think dialectically. So yeah, I can understand that if you are recovering from a traumatic childhood there are corners of social media where they make it sound like the only way to recover from a traumatic childhood is cut those people off, never talk to them again, pretend that you were sprouted, you know, you were like, you sprouted full form like Athena from the mind of Zeus, right? And there was never a family of origin. There are times that that is 150% valid. There are parents who absolutely deserve and need to be estranged from their children, who will undergo extreme harm, who will undergo who will double down on extreme harm and say, yeah, if I would have it again. Like when I was speaking to a family where there was a situation where a trusted community member abused children, and I said to a parent, you know, how do you feel about it now? And the mom said, if I could only go into a time machine, I would handle that whole situation entirely differently. Where, yeah, and then I've heard the opposite. I've heard a parent say, no, I would do it again. Oh yeah, that was harmful to you? Well, I would do it double because you deserved it. Where it's like, okay, at what point do I not want to hear that I deserved abuse? And at what point is it not worth it to be around this person who is going to continually be abusive, where I'm going to give them feedback and I'm going to say, I find it really uncomfortable when you call me that name. Can you please not call me that name anymore? I'm going to call you that name whenever I want. I'm going to say whatever I want to you. And in fact, I'm going to call you 10 worse names. Yeah, at some point you say, yeah, you know what? I'm voting with my feet. There is place for that in truly harmful, toxic situations, particularly when you've tried. When you've said to somebody, this is harmful to me. Can we agree to stop? And the person says, no, in fact, I'm going to do it even more. Don't tell me what to do. Okay, I won't tell you what to do, but I'm also not going to be around for it. Right? There's a place for that. And then there's also a place for setting a boundary. Remember that boundaries are not what, you know, very often in dysfunctional family dynamics, when I come in as a therapist and I say we're going to set boundaries, people look at boundaries as this threatening thing, like we're going to cut off the relationship. Boundaries are actually what preserve relationships. So if we set a boundary where, like, you know, I'm going to come to the family holiday party, but you know, when the alcohol comes out, people start saying really mean things, so I leave as soon as the alcohol comes out. That boundary is actually how safe I feel being around you. I feel safe around you until the alcohol comes out, then I leave, right? The minute people start saying hurtful things, I'm walking out the door, right? You know, I've heard people, you know, come to a family party, give a family a second chance, only to hear extremely hurtful, harmful things. Some members of the post-traumatic parenting community, when I asked them for like harmful things dysfunctional family members said, were things like, in a family where a uncle molested some nieces, and the nieces said, we will not come to a family party if this uncle is here, which is a totally appropriate boundary to set. I do not feel comfortable bringing my children into a room where this uncle is. Where in another aunt, not the uncle's wife, but a different aunt said, yeah, he molested you, but he didn't mean to molest you. I would love to understand the delusional headspace someone can be in. Like what does that even mean? I would love, someone can explain to me the thinking that led someone to say that. I would love to know, because my very well-trained psychologist brain can't figure that one out. Or some equivalent of, you were asking for it, like, but it was your fault, right? Like, yeah, I don't need to hear that. I'm not gonna hear that. I'm not taking that. And that's like, bye-bye, voting with my feet. And then if you give a family member feedback and you say, I will come to the party, but if I hear statements like that, I won't come ever again. And then they make a statement like that, who really cut off who, right? But then there are situations where this person is uncomfortable to be around. They say critical things, hurtful things. It bothers me, but it's not actually dangerous. Like, I've developed adult coping tools and adult coping skills, and I know that that won't roll downhill onto my kids. Like, that person will say those mean things to me, and I will process, and I will figure it out, and I will self-regulate, and then I won't take it out on my kids, and I will be a present parent later. So yeah, I'm gonna tolerate the discomfort, and I'm gonna go to my family of origin, sort of giving that person permission to be difficult, not toxic, but difficult, right? It's like a mild irritant. Think like poison ivy. I'm going to get a rash, but I'll be okay. I'm going to do that because I don't actually want to estrange. If you don't want to estrange, don't estrange. There are corners of the internet that make it sound like it's obligatory for your healing. I am here to tell you that is not true. You are allowed to say, my parents did the best they could with the tools they had. Their tools were inadequate, and therefore I'm going to do things differently. That doesn't mean you're being disrespectful to your parents. You're allowed to say, There were times in my life my parents didn't do the best they could with the tools they had, and actually some of the things they did were harmful. And I still value the relationship, and I want to keep them in my life in this very specific way. I'm going to set boundaries around certain things. There are certain aspects of their beliefs that I don't want my children to be exposed to, but I will keep them in my life because I do value parts of the relationship. There are many ways to set boundaries with a family of origin and to test it out, to hang around for an hour, see how it feels, see if the next day you're dissociating or you're, snapping at your kids, or you're, not capable of functioning, you have a terrible migraine that you can't get out of bed for 2 weeks, versus like, no, I'm actually fine. It was uncomfortable. I didn't love it. Maybe, when all the kids are sleeping in the car, you and your husband kind of dish about like the worst possible parts of that meeting, or like whatever. Sometimes, I've been in situations with difficult people where I only have to like sort of give my husband a raised eyebrow look, and like he gets what I'm talking about, and he'll give me the raised eyebrow look right back, and I get what he's talking about, and that's enough support to get me through the situation, right? So sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's like on the way home, yeah, I'm going to the holiday party, or I'm going to visit my family, I'm going to be around this difficult aunt who says those hurtful things, but I am definitely having ice cream on the way home, and that's enough. The point is, you do you. It's your journey. You get to decide how you're going to do this journey. You get to decide if you're going to set a boundary, stick to a boundary, vote with your feet, not vote with your feet. No one gets to tell you how you do you. No one gets to doubt your experience of your experience. You get to decide, and it's okay to be ambivalent. It's okay to fiercely love many aspects of a person from your childhood while also really having trouble with some of them. People don't have to be consistent in order to be in our lives. People don't have to be perfect in order to be in our lives. If being around them is so stressful that we can't parent, then we have to rethink that, because I think our primary job as the attachment figure of our children is to make sure we are psychologically available to be their attachment figure. So if it's interfering with my ability to be an attachment figure, then I might have to rethink. But if it isn't interfering with my ability to be an attachment figure, if it's just uncomfortable but not dangerous, I've learned that discomfort is not danger. I've learned that I can say that I am a post-traumatic parent without vilifying my own parents. It's okay. Two things can be true. If you like this video, if this was helpful, please tell a fellow post-traumatic parent about post-traumatic parenting. If this was thought-provoking, if you disagree with me, comment below. Let me know. If you agree, if you have more to suggest about how to handle difficult family dynamics as a post-traumatic parent, I really want to hear about it. As always, if you want to hang out where your fellow post-traumatic parents hang out, check out at Dr. Koslowitz Psychology on Instagram. If you want to read my writing about parenting, you can check out my targeted parenting blog on Psychology Today. The Post-Traumatic Parenting Podcast is where I interview experts on the intersection between trauma and parenting. And of course, the book, Post-Traumatic Parenting, is forthcoming from Broadleaf in 2025. Pre-orders will be up on my website, drrobinkoslowitz.com, pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. And as always, please comment, like, share, save, let people know about this video, because the post-traumatic parenting community grows one post-traumatic parent at a time. Till next time.